Hi everybody. You know, it's cold everywhere. It's cold everywhere in the United States right now. Maybe you guys in Europe too. So here's something that we got to keep in mind, especially for acoustic guitars. We, as musicians, play a tree. Jimi Hendrix played a tree. Bill Monroe, Lester Flatt, Joni Mitchell played a tree. As a matter of fact, here's a picture of Jimi Hendrix burning a tree. But that's another story. Oh, I know. You want to see that again, don't you? That's the famous Hendrix shot. You know, the guy that took this shot was just there at the concert. He said he had an unused roll of film, and this particular shot, which is one of the most legendary shots of all, was just his one last shot of film as Hendrix lit it up. But again, that's another story. What happens is when you have an acoustic guitar, you can see all these grain lines. This is finish covering it, protecting it from absorbing wood, but the inside is bare wood, and this will expel moisture or absorb moisture. But if there's no moisture in the room will draw moisture out of your guitar, and that can create problems. One of the biggest problems is cracks. Sometimes you'll see a crack in your guitar. When it gets dry, it opens up. And then sometimes your bridge will lift up. What happens is all of this is built as a structure, and if the top shrinks from lack of moisture, then the braces will pull out. Sometimes they pop out. Sometimes that then creates cracks. It can create pulling up or sinking. Here's another thing to consider. Take a sponge. Picture a sponge in your head. Everybody ready? Sponge. Got it. Good. Now, a sponge fat with water is like this, but what happens when it dries out? It gets that sunfish thing, and it changes. So with that, and it changes, you have your action. How do you like this? This is like a shoelace from one of my boots. Cool, huh? So what happens is it sinks, and then your string will come closer as the bridge comes down. So your top sinks in. Now you get buzzing, and you bring it into your repair guy, and your repair guy goes, don't worry, I'll just put in a taller saddle, we'll bring that up. Now in the spring, the moisture fills in just like your sponge, and it straightens out. So that top that was sinking now comes up, and now your string is up here. I'm exaggerating, but your string goes up here. Now you've got this high action. And so a lot of times people will have a summer saddle and a winter saddle, right? But this is something we see quite a bit, is this concept, well, you just adjusted it. A lot of that has to do with humidity. Older guitars, vintage guitars, tend to be more stable. For one reason, that wood was stored for decades before it came out to go into the kiln. Modern wood is greener trees. They're less old, so there's more sap in the tree. And modern trees, it's true, modern trees will also age differently. And so older vintage guitars tend to have more stable wood. They've had 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years to stabilize. Modern guitars tend to be less stable and more moody until they kind of age out a little bit. So you're going to have probably a little more trouble. Cheap guitars too are going to have greener wood. There's still sap in there. You might even try to tap it and make some maple syrup, he says, jokingly. So this is my message for you today. Make sure to humidify your guitar. Get yourself a humidity gauge. I buy these on Amazon for about 16 bucks. These are just clock face. I never get a humidity gauge with a battery. Why? Well, you know why. Non-battery humidity gauge, so you know where you're coming from. You walk in the room, we set this down, and you guys can see from there, it's in the green. That means you have enough humidity. Ideally, above 30%. 30% is bad for a guitar. That will draw moisture out and make your top sink and crack. It's time for you down below the Mason-Dixon line to look at your tops, and you can sometimes feel the tops, they get bumpy. If you imagine all these grains are like straws, and you will feel the bumpiness as though going through above little fingers. You can also look at it and see that it's sunken, and you can also look at it and see there's a giant crack in it. Mommy! All right? There you go.